Good morning, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So I thought I'd give you guys a bit of a lumber update video. For those of you who don't know, I do retail sales for a living inside of the building supply industry. I live in the Pacific Northwest. I know mill operators, loggers, truck drivers, other retail stores. I know distribution hubs. There's really no corner of this market I can't see. So when I see a lot of the information that is coming out on the mainstream media, it is so far from the truth. Not necessarily like lies that are being told, but very much misunderstandings of what it is that's taken place within this industry. A lot of times we look for recent events that have taken place to do the explaining of why it is we've had such dramatic moves in particular markets. And lumber seems to be one that takes in information that has recently happened in order to give the excuse for why it is that the prices have moved so dramatically. And a lot of times when I see these moves that are taking place, I think to myself, nah, this was something that was going to be taking place anyway, regardless of the new information that has come out or the credible threats of what's coming to the future that is driving these market prices. Now, mainly when it comes to lumber, I see lumber prices that are down. Like lumber futures are not expensive right now comparatively to what they have been over the last few years. Now, at 500 per thousand, this is talking lumber, this would have been considered a very normal price, say prior to COVID. But after COVID, in all the inflationary scenarios that we have experienced, added input cost, travel expenses, labor cost, everything that goes into producing anything out there has all gone up, but yet lumber future prices are where they were prior to the pandemic. This is not expensive lumber. However, you would find information out there of credible sources like the National Association of Home Builders. I'll leave a link down in the description of this video to an article talking about how the cost of building is going up, and it's led by lumber. Like they're using lumber as the excuse for why it is that, they have other excuses within the article, but the headline is claiming lumber, right? So I would agree in the sense that other building materials that are out there, the doors, the windows, the siding, all the nails and little pieces that put all the house together, has gone up in price and hasn't really come down, although you can find deals here and there. Lumber has come down, and it's come down significantly from its all-time high. When it was at $1,700 per thousand, I would sell a 2x4/8 standard and better kiln-dried lumber for $13.50. Now, although I had them for sale at $13.50, I wasn't selling a lot at $13.50. Right now, I have them for sale at $3.99. And although lumber sales are down comparatively to what they were just a few years ago, they sell a lot more at $3.99 than they do at $13.50. So now there's a situation that had taken place within the building industry that really caused those lumber prices to move up as significant as they did, only to find that there was a dramatic pullback that literally crashed the prices of lumber, only to find them bounce right back up again to not to the all-time high, but to an incredible high, only to now be back down to where they were once again prior to the pandemic. It's a seesaw roller coaster. I don't even know how to describe this type of market, but ultimately what it has come down to was availability of the material itself. And this is where I think a lot of people start to get very confused. They want to blame corporations, they want to blame greed, and they want to have all the excuses and reasonings for it, but very rarely do they want to look back far enough to find out why it is that the events that are occurring today are taking place not because of the recent news events, but because of events that had happened literally decades earlier. See, following the lumber industry as closely as I have has given me much different insight into not only the housing industry, the building industry, but also when it comes down to just general market conditions. See, you think about it, like lumber is an indicator of new building. New building, like whether it's a house or some high-rise or a hospital, regardless of what it is, when you have building taking place, this is the main component of production that's taken place in the United States. I mean, think about how much input goes into building. Domestic materials, domestic labor, domestic product doesn't really leave any, can't leave, right? All the money stays here for the most part. You know, you might find some of the accessories that go into the building, some of the features, the fixtures, stuff like that, may come from foreign production, but the majority of that building, the cost of it, came from domestic supply. So if you have a slowdown in building, you have a slowdown in manufacturing. That's one of the main components of this economy. So watching the lumber industry is a very good indication of what it is that's taken place within the new markets, within the new building market. And so when I look at lumber and I look at things like permit issuance, and I see how permit issuance is on a downward trend and has been over the last couple of years, it's no surprise to me that the demand for lumber is now down. This is something that I'm experiencing personally, and it's not something that you're going to find news articles on. Like, you don't find news articles out there of people talking about how the phone calls for contractors' names so that they could get bids on their projects have come to pretty much a stop. You don't see news articles out there of contractors who are coming to the desk and saying, hey, do you know of anybody who's needing any framing done? I'm out of work for the next 2-3 weeks, month. See, this is something that I haven't heard or seen in a very long time, and although it's personal and not exactly something that can be confirmed out there, it's really happening. And it's not just my view of it. You can see the evidence of it when it comes to permit issuance. New starts. This downward trend is reflective within the building supply industry, and especially when it comes to lumber. If you do not have an increase in demand for lumber, then you're going to have a decreasing in inventory. And again, this is not something that you're going to see out there within the mainstream media articles. It would come from somebody who is within the industry looking to buy lumber and can't find particular units. This is the case. This is what I am experiencing right now. Go to buy a unit of 2x6 20-footers, and you probably won't have a problem with it. 2x6, 2x4, stud lengths, random lengths, these are the items that sell. But you go to buy a unit of 2x12 20-footers or 2x12 18-footers, and you may find that there's the difficulty finding those particular units because the mills are not in the desire to produce stuff that isn't moving. And with a slowdown in permit issuance and new starts, you know that the demand for lumber is going to be low. So why produce that of what isn't going to sell when you can produce that what is going to sell? And the most common lengths and common sizes of lumber out there that is purchased by most people for most projects is going to be 2x4s and 2x6, stud length and plate stock. It's no wonder why there's plenty of availability in these items, but very low availability in the wides and the longs. It's starting to move into beam stock as well. Recently in Washington, there was a permanent shutdown of a timber mill that would produce those size beams. And when that mill went down, the availability of beams became somewhat difficult. Now, it did find its equilibrium as the sourcing of other material comes from different locations and eventually fills the sluices, so to speak. But for a time there, you could see where it was very difficult to acquire it. OSB has been in the same condition. They shut down OSB production at the end of 2019, literally pulling hundreds of billions of square feet of production off the market. Shortly after that, we had plywood prices running up to $80 a sheet. Like normally they would be $20 a sheet for a half-inch CDX 5-ply. OSB would normally be somewhere around $10 a sheet, even less in some cases. And we saw all that sheathing go up to $80 a sheet. And people wanted to scream manipulation and greed. And I'm thinking, does anybody remember the pulling of the production of hundreds of billions of square feet of production being pulled And now here we have a shortage. And people are saying this is greed and manipulation. I'm saying no, the mill ran out of business. And they couldn't operate anymore. The cost of material, the cost of labor, the cost of manufacturing was too much for them, and they shut the production of it down. Now new production has fired up. And surprisingly, it's here in the United States that we have a major OSB manufacturer who is going to be distributing out massive amounts of the sheathing going into the building supply industry. However, that massive manufacturing is still just a small part of the overall production that's taken place. And it's not like it's going to all of a sudden bring in all the supply that we ever needed again to bring sheathing down to the $10 a sheet again. It doesn't work like that. The cost of production has now put these mills in a situation in which that returning back to those low levels, those $10 or under $10 a sheet OSB or $2 studs, that's not going to be taking place anymore. Even now, at the $550 per thousand, or I think the futures closed at $540 per thousand, which is about a 10% drop, I believe, over the last couple of weeks, is not very conducive to profits for the mill. Like, they're not going to be producing a lot of lumber at this price. And what I find very interesting is people were getting very excited over the idea of the tariffs that are coming from the future administration. Now, with this future credible threat that is being applied to just about everything out there, why is it that you see lumber falling in such a dramatic price, in a dramatic way in price? Is it because they're all scared of the tariffs that are going to be hitting Canadian lumber? Or is it the fact that the demand for lumber is down and that permit issuance is down and that the idea of new build coming to this economy here in the United States would come when you're in an easing cycle? The Federal Reserve is in a tightening cycle right now. There is no expectation that there is going to be a ramping up of new builds if you're in a tightening cycle as opposed to an easing cycle. Again, this is just some of the things that I'm witnessing here from my personal standpoint when I watch loggers who are shutting down their operations, guys who worked in the woods now sweeping their shops, when I see mill operations shutting down all over the nation, when I see huge gaps in inventory when it comes to lumber, when I see demand is as low as it is, it doesn't give me much hope to believe that there's going to be a major new build coming anytime soon. I mean, even think about the idea that there is going to be a future house put right here on this piece of property. You see a piece of property right here. Think about how long it takes from the time that you decide that you want to build that house to the time it actually comes to fruition. The logistics that go into building homes is not something that can just fire up. The availability of the labor, the availability of contractors, availability of material, the availability of everything out there is so limited that it makes it very expensive, and time is money. And if it takes time to acquire these things, that costs money every single moment it goes by without the project going together. And this is something that I think a lot of people misunderstand. They think like you could just fire a production and just make it super easy. Just build houses, no big deal, just do it. Right? Not realizing the amount of interest rate adjustments into that building industry has such an amazing impact on it. When you're going from a restrictive economy to a loose economy, and the amount of restriction within that economy slows building down dramatically, not only can people have a hard time making their payments, they're having a hard time getting the loan to even do the project in the first place. So again, I watch lumber and I watch it close, because it's very telling to me of what's going on within the broader economy. You can see the reasonings that takes place, and you don't have to blame it on recent events or credible threats. You can know these events are taking place well ahead of time. And I can tell you now that there's probably not going to be a dramatic rise in lumber prices if we do not have an increase in permit issuance and starts. Supply versus demand. And although the mills want to work, they want to produce, they want to sell a lot of lumber, but they also want to profit when they do it. And if they're producing a lot of lumber and it's driving the prices down, then they're not going to be producing a lot of lumber. That does make sense, right? I mean, nobody wants to work for free. And so just like any other supply and demand issues that you might have out there, lumber is no different. And following the idea that it's recent credible threats or some recent news article that you just read that is now creating the situation that caused the prices to drop over the last couple of weeks, you're misunderstanding what has been taking place over the last few years. Yeah. I mean, this is the reason why I got popular on the internet, was because of my ability to see so deep into this lumber industry and then apply it to the housing market, the new building industry. There was really nobody else who called it out as good as I did. And I'm not meaning to brag on it. It's because of the location that I'm in. It's because of the position I have within my job, this boots on the ground. I mean, I don't know how else to share it with you guys other than what it is that I'm seeing firsthand. And every time I come out here and I share this idea and I tell people, listen, we got this slowdown happening here, and you can see it within the broader economy, all the way down to the lumber sales, permit issuance, and I'll have somebody, I guarantee you will find somebody in this comment section says, dude, you're delusional. You should come to my area. It's kicking. Right? And so if this is the only view that you take on, right? Like if I was to take the view that I have just personally from what it is that I see, it would be a dramatic slowdown. But I'm also in a position in which that if I look outside my store's doors, I can see major projects happening all over the place. Hospital districts building a new wing on their facility. They got the Columbia River Maritime Museum that's building a huge new addition within there. Like they took out a huge section of the parking lot to build a new addition. Got a new medical facility that is being built right across the street from where I work. And I know that this is a view that would show, man, look at all this happening right here, right now. It is booming, right? But it's three major jobs that happen to be very close within, like I could see all three job sites from standing in one spot. And so when you think Astoria of 10,000 people having this major projects happening in such an area, it would give that appearance that it is booming. It is not, right? I'm not saying that it's doing horribly, but it's not like it was a couple of years ago where we had the phones ringing off the hooks and massive amounts of people coming in looking to buy, material to remodel, to expand, to enjoy their environment because they were all locked down. Like, that's past, right? That's faded away. And the more I see the permit issuance falling, the harder it is that I'm going to see the economy struggling to try and find that momentum to keep going. You think about it, like when you have builders out there building in different locations, think about how that ramps up the hotels, how it ramps up the restaurants, how it ramps up the building supplies, how it ramps up everything that's in that community. Building is a huge indication of economic strength. And when you see it slowing down as much as we have recently, it's a very good indication of what has taken place in the broader economy, which I believe is also slowing down. All right. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.